on this computer. All right. Very good. All right, so again, welcome. Glad to have you here. We are recording this session, so if you want your video turned off, now is the time to do that. We will begin, as we always do, in prayer. So I invite you to join me. I know you're muted. If we unmute everybody, it'll sound like chaos. So I invite you to keep your mics muted, but join me in prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Good and gracious God, we thank you for allowing us to come together tonight to talk about our future here at Holy Trinity School. We thank you for keeping us well, for keeping us healthy, for protecting our families, and most of all, for watching over our little ones here at Holy Trinity School and our not so little ones here at Holy Trinity. Continue to keep your protective hand on us, and we ask all these things in the words your Son taught us. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Well, we're up to almost 40 participants. That makes me happy. I know it's hard to get here at 6 o'clock. That's why we are recording this session. If you don't want to be on record, you need to disconnect your video. That's the last time I'll mention that, promise. Father Ricky sends his regards. He unfortunately is out of town today and was not able to get dialed in on our Zoom call, but he sends his regards and his best wishes. Reminds you that he prays for you all every single day. If you haven't been able to be here at Mass, he does remember Holy Trinity School at every Mass, and we are thankful for his continued blessings and prayers and support here at Holy Trinity. Tonight is the first of 3 meetings that we're going to have over the next couple of weeks. And the purpose of tonight's meeting is really to give you a big picture, a bird's eye view, if you will, to talk a little bit more about what I've shared in the email that I sent to you, and to talk a little bit more in detail about our upcoming temporary distance learning program. But to give you an overview and a big picture of all of the other programs as well. The 2 other meetings coming up, one next week will be the Meet the Teacher and Back to School night. Those are on 3 separate nights to allow me to kind of be present at all of them. And so those will occur next week on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. We'll send those links out in the email to you. And the following week, we have the opportunity for in-person pickup of technology, pickup of work packets, orientation, especially for our new families that are joining us, a chance for them to get oriented. If you feel like you need a quick refresher on Google Classroom or Zoom or Dojo, we'll be here to provide that. All of the teachers will be on campus during those days of orientation. We invite you to bring your child if you feel comfortable. While we're on campus, everyone must maintain social distancing and must wear a mask, so it's completely up to you. We know sometimes for our little ones, they need to see their teacher and connect, but we're also aware of safety factors and wanting to keep your family safe. So in the end, it'll be your decision. You do what's best for your family. We will support you 100% in whatever decisions you make. But do know that we will be here with technology for you to pick up, packets for you to pick up, and information, as well as an in-person orientation. Hopefully every adult will be able to make it, as you did for packet pickups. You were all great about doing that. And so we're excited to begin again. But it gives us a little chance to be a little more in person those first couple of days, just to see everyone before we begin distance learning. So the big picture, the bird's eye view. Our ultimate goal is the safe return to campus for in-person instruction. When will that be? That's the big question everybody keeps asking. I don't know. I don't think any of us knows, unfortunately. We are subject, just as every school is, to county public health. County public health carries the weight of law. And so when county public health says no in-person instruction or liturgies must be held outside, that's the law, and that's what we obey. I know you've heard, some of you have asked about waivers. What about waivers? I'll talk a little bit about some of that in just a few minutes, but right now know that our ultimate goal is to get everybody safely back to campus eventually. But emphasis on the word safely. We can't rush into anything and just have everybody come back if we can't be safe. So I want to talk for just a minute about some of the things that we've done to get our community safe and to start preparing. We've been preparing since last April, thinking that maybe we would be ready for in-person instruction right away, and waiting to see what the county does. Unfortunately, if we wait to hear what the governor and the county does, we change every single day. So we had to kind of take the long view and start preparing in April for an eventual return to campus. All of these items will be here and ready for our kids whenever they tell us that we are safe to go. So some of those things I know I've already mentioned in our emails to you, but all of the classrooms now have no-touch automatic sanitizers. If you've come for Mass, maybe you've seen them at our front and back gates. They're also at the bottom of each set of stairs, as well as at both entrances to the school. We also have no-touch soap dispensers in the bathrooms. A plexiglass has been installed in the office, where we get a lot of visitors, just to ensure some extra social distancing. Even though our desks allow for 6 feet distancing, we wanted to provide a little extra protection on both sides of the glass. So plexiglass has been installed in the office. We have established a health room where the old principal's office used to be. The principal is now sitting sort of in the front office directly in front of the door. It's where you saw me most of the time last year. I'm continuing to sit there. And the closed room that offered us some privacy for conferences will be our health room. For private conferences, we'll now use the faculty room upstairs where we can socially distance and gather in a if we need to have 2 or 3 parents, we can do that in the faculty room without violating any social distance policies. Our health room is where we're storing all of our sanitizer and extra masks, as well as our first aid. We also have the ability to isolate a student in that room safely if somebody becomes ill while they are on campus. We've marked the lunch benches for limited seating. Some of you have asked in the frequently asked questions, what are you going to do about lunch? We have 3 lunch periods and 3 recess periods scheduled. That allows us to have no more than 50 students out at a time. And we have enough benches to put 2 students at each lunch bench and have 50 students out in the pavilion on opposite ends, so diagonal from each other, which gives us a 6 feet distancing between them. We've also got the digital temperature. We've got a kiosk that will be at our front Boyce Avenue gate. Very fancy. Getting connected tomorrow, I believe, is our final date for that. And of course, we have the no temperature thermometers that we've been using for Mass and that we use for summer camp. Every person who comes on campus at any time during the day needs to go through the health screening. That includes teachers, staff, as well as anybody visiting campus. Goes through our health screening and has a digital temperature check as well. We've limited our class sizes for social distancing. Our large classrooms can hold 20 students at 6 feet apart. That's not a problem because our largest class is 15, but we do have desk space for up to 20. In all of our classrooms, we will not be changing classrooms or rotating the classrooms. The students will be sitting in an assigned and labeled desk and chair, and they will not be rotating. For junior high, teachers will be rotating classrooms in order to minimize the amount of mixing that students do. Again, that's once we return to in-person instruction. Drinking fountains have all been converted to water bottle filling stations. So no more drinking fountains, but students will have the opportunity to fill their water bottles at any of the drinking fountains. And you'll find social distance markings all over campus, including in the classrooms. Right now, they're scrubbing our floors and waxing our floors, so the paw prints had to come up temporarily. But we have our husky paw prints marking 6 feet apart for the desks, as well as 6 feet apart for the students to line up and where to sit and where to stand. We've all grown used to that. In each of the stores that we visit when we occasionally go out, we've gotten used to it. And it was amazing to me to see how quickly students in summer camp adapted to finding their blue X or finding their paw print in order to stand on it. As I mentioned, we've adjusted our recess and lunch schedules to limit the cohort mixing so that we will have no more than 50 students out at a time, usually 3 to 4 grade levels, depending upon the size of the class. And we've practiced and established a lot of procedures over our summer camp. For those of you who didn't know, we had a little tiny summer camp over 4 weeks of July. We had about 20 kids here involved in summer camp. Masks all the time. Some students wore masks and shields, which of course is perfectly allowed. We've analyzed and looked at all the different masks. We found lanyards to hold masks around necks so that they don't fall off when we have to take them off for something like a Zoom call or for lunch or drinking. We've analyzed comfortable masks and comfortable shields, and we've got a host of information to share with you when the time is right and we are coming back to class. I was most worried about with summer camp recess. What's recess going to look like with kids 6 feet apart? How is that going to work? And in fact, that first day of summer camp, I looked at the campers and I said, why don't we just stay in the pavilion? We didn't have church in the pavilion at that time. We had the lunch benches in. It's cooler in here. And they were like, no, Miss Lloyd, let's go out. Okay, we'll go out. What's this going to look like? It was amazing to me how quickly the kids adapted. They're so flexible in learning the rules and learning to follow the rules. But their ability to stay 6 feet apart and get creative was absolutely fabulous. I learned how to play shadow tag. We had some dance-offs. Rock, paper, scissors became a quick favorite of everybody. We even had a couple of rock, paper, scissors tournaments around here, which was fun. Soccer, where they only kick the ball and the teacher is the one who picks up and puts down the ball, became a fast favorite. Simon Says and Stop and Go, red light, green light. We used to play that when I was a kid. All of those games quickly came back and became favorites of the kids. And I have no doubt that as all the teachers come together, we've all been here, but separately in small cohorts, we all come back together tomorrow for our conferencing. And so I'm sure as we all come back together, there's going to be even more games and sharing of ideas. Many of us are out there on Pinterest gathering ideas every night. And so I look forward to sharing more of those ideas with them. We also managed the supply issue. We were all, some of the teachers' biggest questions before we went on distance, before we returned to in-person instruction was, what do we do about supplies? So many of us share supplies. And we were quickly able to figure that out too during summer instruction. Each child had their own basket. It's labeled with their materials inside, only they touch their basket. And it was really easy and quick to get them organized and to be able to find space for all of that storage. So no more sharing is caring. We have a new way of thinking. Sharing is not caring. Now we need to use only our own materials. And not share food, not share supplies, but the kids were really great about adapting to that. In fact, I've told this story a few times to people who have come on campus. The third day of summer camp, Ms. Rampone was not able to be here first thing in the morning. She had an appointment, and so I subbed for a few minutes in Miss Nelson's class because she had the older kids. Miss Nelson took the itsy bitsies because that's not Miss Lloyd's forte. And so I was in with the 5th through 8th graders. And we were teaching math, and so I went up to the board, and I'm kind of looking around for the marker, and the kids are like, your marker is on the back desk. And I said, okay, and I went to the board. I started writing on the board. I called them to the board, and they're like, no, we bring our own marker to the board. We use our own eraser. They were schooling me on how to do things by the 3rd day of summer camp. And I thought, this is so fabulous that they understand and know these rules and procedures even better than I did at that point, since I hadn't been teaching. And then just getting a chance to watch all the teachers in action in the classroom was amazing. So if I had any, and then washing hands became a procedure on its own. The kids quickly adapted. The teachers stole this idea from the local the YMCA that was doing daycare. They were using washable markers, and they'd put just a line on their hand to make sure that when the kids went to the bathroom, they really washed their hands with soap and water and got the mark off. And so it was just a cute way, and it was fun, again, to see my 7th and 8th graders, again, on the 3rd day, holding out their hand at the beginning of break. No, Miss Lloyd, you have to mark our hands. We're going to go wash. And just how quickly they adapt was amazing. If I had any doubts about whether or not, once it's safe for us to be able to all come back to campus, it pretty much erased those doubts. I know that we can figure this out and be safe. So, We're anxiously awaiting word from the Archdiocese about waivers and whether those are going to be allowed. Many of you have asked, especially people who are interested in returning to in-person instruction quickly. We understand. We are at the, we work with the Archdiocese and County Public Health. Nobody is going to be given a waiver until the numbers come down in LA County. That's strictly the guidance that we've gotten from Governor Newsom, and nothing is going to change that. So we won't be applying until it's safe to do so. Once it's safe to do so, the Archdiocese will apply for our Catholic schools for a waiver. Now, why would we qualify for a waiver when maybe LAUSD is not going back to in-person instruction? Or even some of our larger Catholic schools, maybe you have a student that's in a Catholic high school and they're not talking about going back to in-person instruction yet. Part of it has to do with the size and the structure of the school. We are a very small school, less than 150 students. 15 in each classroom makes it makes it very easy for us to social distance. Our small classrooms have a maximum of 12 in the room, and TK, we're only taking 10 because we know they need a little more space to spread out. And so by limiting all of those class sizes, we're able to provide something that some of our larger schools simply cannot, and that is safe social distancing. We're able to break our schedule down into three periods for recess, 3 periods for lunch, and safely rotate, we believe, with the number of parents that are going to want to return to in-person instruction. So we believe we can do all of that safely. Our friends at LAUSD have different problems that they're struggling with, not to mention the chief of which is a budget that has been severely cut by both the federal and the state. So they're being asked to do more with their students with less resources. They're being asked to have only 15 to 20 students in a classroom when generally they're assigned classrooms of 30 and upwards in some grade levels. And so they have a whole host of different problems that we just simply don't have to tackle. Even some of our Catholic school counterparts, I got a call from one of our Catholic schools that has a new principal at the school this year, and he said to me, he says, I think I'm in trouble. And he said, what's wrong? And he says, we only have the desks that sit 2 students at a desk. So the double desks, you know what those look like? They're about 4 feet long, and you usually sit 2 students at them. We had them in TK for a while, but we also have the individual student desks for all of our students. But his whole school only has those double desks. They're in a position that unless they can get single student desks, they simply can't return to in-person instruction. Some of our other Catholic schools that are larger are looking at what do they do because they have more than 20 kids in a class, and you simply can't safely social distance with that problem. So they're looking at a way to maybe create cohorts and do, you know, hybrid learning or half on, half off. Fortunately, that's not our problem. I never thought I'd be happy to have such a little tiny school, especially when it means our budget is pinched so tight all the time. But this has definitely been a huge plus for us here at Holy Trinity. And so thank God he knows in his infinite wisdom what he is about. I don't know if any of you know Mamerta Pailanga. She is one of our parishioners who's always present at Mass, one of the grandmas of the parish, if you will. And she said to us the other day, she was talking about when her kids were at school many, many years ago, and how the parents fussed over the pavilion being built. They didn't want the pavilion. They thought it was wrecking a beautiful sunny space, and why would we put this pavilion up? And she laughed the other day and she says, God knows what he's about. This is now our church here in the pavilion. If we had not done that, how many years ago, I'm sure it's 20 plus years ago at this point, if we had not done that 20 plus years ago, where would we have church? Would we be in the parking lot? Would we be in tents? Would we not be able to have liturgy at all? What would we be doing? God knows what he's about. And so we are excited that he has a plan for us. And when those plans are right, I know it will all come together for us. But following the logic of many of the saints who have said, pray as if everything depends on God, and work as if everything depends on you, we have been hard at work trying to make sure that we are ready when God gives us the green light to go ahead. So we knew that we needed to be very flexible here with our families. We have many families, and everybody is in a different place, and there is no judgment from anyone about where you happen to be with your family. Maybe you're living in a situation where you have a vulnerable adult living with you, and you need to be extra careful. Maybe they have asthma issues, or maybe someone's recovering from cancer and chemotherapy, or maybe you're just living with grandma and grandpa, and we need to be careful with our older adults in the house. No judgment. We know those families need to be extra careful. Maybe you are simply being extra cautious because you have a large family and you don't want it spread, or a baby or a tiny little one at home. Whatever reason you have for being careful, we understand and completely support you with that. And our promise to you is that we will make it work for you. And I'll explain in a little bit how in just a minute. Also, no judgment to those families that say, Miss Lloyd, you don't understand. I have to work. There's nobody home to help my child with distance learning. When can they come back to school? I promise you that we will be doing in-person learning for those that are ready to do it just as soon as it's safe and as soon as the county allows us to do so. So altogether, this grand plan that is really flexible for the needs of our families is called High Flex, HY for hybrid, and flex for the flexible part of the program. It got dubbed that by the Archdiocese of Los Angeles as we were sharing our plans, and it's kind of stuck with the faculty, so we're keeping it as a way of describing what it is that we are going to be doing for families. So when we receive the go-ahead, we will be returning to a high flex option. What is a high flex option? A high flex option is simply this. You will choose what's best for your family and your situation where you're at. You might choose all in-person instruction. So going back to the way it was, 8 to 3, your students in classes with teachers, socially distanced, with masks, with all the protections, the hand washing, the sanitizer, etc. Maybe that's a choice that your family needs to make. Maybe you need to do all distance learning. Maybe you're in a position where someone's at home, maybe they can help the students, and for the protection of your family, you want to do all distance learning. We will make that work for you. Or maybe you want to do some sort of hybrid of the two. You wouldn't mind your child coming in for an hour or two, maybe once a week, maybe twice a week, in order to get some in-person instruction, and then have them do distance learning for the remainder of their program. Whatever it is you decide, we will be able to work that out for you. We've got all the scenarios planned out. I've spent my entire summer developing handbooks for all of this, and schedules and all sorts of options for you. You know me, I love doing that kind of thing, and working with the teachers and working with Father and working with the Archdiocese has been a blast. It's been a challenge, but it's also been fun to see it all come together. So if I were to give you all the information about that tonight, you'd walk away on total overload. So I'm not gonna share all of that with you tonight, other than to give you the bird's eye view. If you want specific detailed information, or if you wanna talk to me privately because you're thinking of doing hybrid learning, or you're thinking of doing only distance learning, I would invite you to talk to me personally about that. When the county gives us the go-ahead to begin implementing that, we will have several meetings that explain those options in depth. But right now, what I really want to concentrate on is our temporary return to distance learning for everybody, because that's what's most important right now for all of our kids. Everybody is on distance learning. We know that there is no way, because of Governor Newsom's order, that anything is going to be adjusted before Labor Day at this point. And we need 2 weeks beyond whenever those numbers start to come down for the county. So I don't anticipate anything changing anytime before mid-September, and maybe not even then, folks. We need to be patient and safe as we prepare to come back. So rather than put you on overload tonight, what I really wanted to share with you is the distance learning that we will be engaging in for the short term until we're allowed to come back to our high flex program. Okay. Again, if you have questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat. Those are coming to us as the hosts privately. We are recording them, and we will be able to respond to you either individually, or if it's a common question, we can respond to it in a frequently asked questions. So feel free to type those questions in. They're only being seen by me and Ms. Lukens right now because we didn't want to distract from the presentation. All right, so you all know that come March 15th, I think it was, we were given about 72 hours to prepare to pivot into distance learning from in-person instruction. And while we had talked about the possibility of going to distance learning and had a few plans in place, such as the teachers had learned Google Classroom and a few other things, 72 hours was not much time. And we were all, you included, learning on the fly. We as teachers were learning, our students were certainly learning, and you as parents, most of all, became primary teachers overnight. And for many of you, it was a frustrating experience. For many of us, it was a frustrating experience too. We all just held on and did the best that we could. And the good news is when we evaluated where we were with our standards at the end of the trimester, we did not lose ground. Many of our teachers were able to cover all of the standards that they had on their curriculum map. Perhaps they didn't cover them in quite the way that they wanted to in some cases, but they were able to cover all of the curriculum. And so our students, remarkably, mostly because we were ahead of schedule when we hit that mark, we were able to maintain a good pace after that mark. We do know that some of our families were not as successful at being able to log in daily. The smaller your little one was, the harder I'm sure it was for you to do Zoom calls on a daily basis. And we know that. The good news is now the teachers and I have had a little over 6 weeks to plan together, knowing that this eventuality, if it wasn't here in the summer, that it would probably hit during flu season. We knew that there would be the eventuality of us coming back to distance learning in some form or another at some point or another. And so we spent a good deal of the last 6 weeks working on plans for that. The only thing that I ask of you, in addition to your patience as always, and your communication as always, is not to ask my teachers how their summer vacation was, because they really didn't get one this year. They got a little time off, a little flex time here and there, but most of them have spent the majority of their time making plans for the new year so that we can all be successful as we launch into this new year. So we have learned a lot, and we put a lot of things in place to make distance learning extremely successful starting August 20th. August 20th will be our first day of distance instruction for the students. It's a Thursday. That Thursday and Friday will be largely about community building, getting to know the students and the teacher, and building community in that classroom with social emotional learning, getting to know the routines of the classroom. I'm sure the following week will also need a couple of days to get the kids into those practices. Routines and procedures are not learned overnight, and they do take time. But we will be starting on August 20th with distance learning. The 17th, 18th, and 19th will be our orientation days and packet pickup days to allow us time to individually meet with you. So what can you expect starting August 20th? The teachers have been hard at work on planning engaging live lessons through Zoom. We will continue to use Zoom. Rigorous and meaningful assessments are planned to match that in-person instruction and will be implemented regularly in order to monitor the student progress. Routines and procedures are being put in place during distance learning that will transition over into both hybrid, in-person, and flex learning time. So many of the procedures that we put in place, many of the things that we talk to the kids about during distance learning are important because they will translate into the routines and procedures of our regular classroom once we're allowed to return to that. Regular assessments, as always, to track the students' progress and record that progress in school speak. We all know the importance of social emotional learning and community building. We didn't do enough of that. We heard that from you, and we tried at the end to build some into it, but we've learned a lot since that time and have built in some regularly scheduled social emotional learning as well as community building on Fridays as well as throughout the schedule for each grade level. You'll hear a lot. We've got a handbook for you that we'll be emailing out to you. And in the handbook, you'll hear some talk about synchronous and asynchronous learning. It's the current buzzwords among all education. Ms. Lukens was joking with me the other day that we needed flashcards for the teachers to keep up with all the new buzzwords that are going around. Synchronous and asynchronous are at the top of the list. It simply means synchronous in time, right? So asynchronous instruction is live instruction. It's instruction that you engage with the teacher during a Zoom call or during a phone conference, during a live instruction. Asynchronous is those assignments that are left for the student in Google Classroom that the student works on independently, that the student may start in synchronous learning and finish on their own during asynchronous time. It's time for the student to work at their own pace, maybe time for them to make choices off of choice boards or menus. All of those things are part of synchronous and asynchronous learning that we will be implementing. We have a regular schedule established at every grade level. It is published. It will be in your handbook that I send out to you through email. And it sets up the same schedule at various grade levels. So all of 6, 7, and 8 by necessity are on the same schedule. We were on the same schedule last year, but now grades 2 through 5 are on the same learning schedule as well as grades K and 1. TK is a separate beast. If you have a TKer coming in, you know how important it is to work one-on-one with the kids. So Ms. Nelson and Ms. Barraza will be working one-on-one with our TKers that are registered, and we will be talking to our families individually about what that looks like so that we can provide some more information about that. You can also expect regular communication from your teacher. We have limited the number of ways that we all communicate in order to help simplify things a little bit. So we will all be using, we will all continue to use Google Classroom to post assignments as well as to post links for Zoom calls and to give students immediate feedback on their lessons and their assignments. We will also be using Class Dojo for text communication with parents, to provide quick answers to questions, to solve tech problems. It's also a chance for us to post up information about our class individually that's of interest only to our families. We'll continue to use SchoolSpeak for all emails. SchoolSpeak is also our student information system, so that's where we record attendance and grades. And we will continue to use Zoom for live instruction. Until Zoom gets too greedy and starts not offering a free app for you to join free. We've heard some rumblings. The teachers all have the paid version or will have the paid version by the time that we begin distance learning. So they're all set. I'm all set. But we know sometimes it's a burden on our families and we don't want families to be caught up in having to pay for the app. We do have Google Meet on standby if we have to use it. We are hoping that we can continue to use Zoom, at least for students to dial in as a freebie. We don't want to add to your expenses in any way. If we have to pivot, we will, and we will offer instruction on how to do that. We've also scheduled in what we call WIN time every day. That's W-I-N for what I need. It's a procedure that we're going to start during distance learning and continue during high flex learning. It will be held from 2 to 3 during distance learning. It's a chance for your child to log in and get individual help with each teacher. Every teacher will be online from 2 to 3 every day for your child to log in, get homework help, ask a question, see the teacher, make that connection, and to get communication. We're also there for you to log in and ask questions of. It's not exactly conference time, but if you need quick answers to a question or need guidance on an assignment, it's the perfect time to get that if you're able to. Our teachers will remain available to families primarily on Fridays for conferences, either via Zoom, telephone, or in person if you'd like those. Our teachers will also be on campus on Mondays, and they will be on campus the entire month of August and most of September as well, as we work all the kinks out. In case you need to come visit with us, we will be here in order to help you with anything that you need. What I need time will be, or when time for the kids will be continued into regular and high flex instruction. It's what will give us the chance to help challenge our students that need more challenge, remediate our students who need extra help and extra assistance, and still provide the teachers with time to meet one-on-one with our hybrid learning students who will be Zooming in from home. So we look forward to continuing that. What are some things that are changing or may change depending on where your family was in distance learning when we started in March? So one of the things that will change is a more careful attendance reckoning. When we all first started, every school had kind of asked the diocese, what are we doing about attendance? And they said, well, do your best. And so we did our best to monitor attendance. That's certainly not good enough. It's not good enough for the kids. It's not good enough for the teachers, and it's probably not good enough for the state. And so we need to tighten up on that a little bit. In order to do so, and in order to help our kids get on a schedule, I'm going to talk about these two things in tandem. Attendance and scheduling was the biggest problem our kids faced. Particularly our older students fell into a bad pattern. They fell into the pattern that I fall into when I don't have to be at school, which is my body likes to stay up until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning and then sleep until about 9 o'clock and then take its time getting up and getting ready for the day. Unfortunately, we live in a world that doesn't work that way, so I don't get to do that. Unfortunately for our kids, some of them fell into that habit and they just couldn't break it. Late bedtimes, not being tired enough, made it very hard for them to get work done. So many of them, we would get emails. I was getting emails from kids at 11, 12 o'clock at night, 1 o'clock in the morning as they were working on assignments. That's just not healthy from them. We all know that as adults. And so we are doing our best from our side to put the structure in place to make sure that you get the kind of structure you need to enforce it with your kids and keep them on track with learning. So part of this attendance taking and rigor will be, we have established an 8 to 8:30 morning meeting for our kids. That's part of that social emotional learning time. The kids need time just to connect with their teacher and connect with each other. Say hello, share what's going on in their life, talk about things. And 8 to 8:30 is the perfect time to do that, as well as to check in with each of them. It's also where we're going to be recording our first attendance marking, is between that 8 to 8:30 mark. I say first because we're going to take attendance at each Zoom call. Depending on your grade level, most classes will be having 3 Zoom calls a day. If that feels intimidating right now, don't worry. I promise we'll get you there. And if it's something that we have to work individually with your family with, I promise we'll record sessions so that your kids can access things later, just the instruction portion, not the whole portion, so you can kind of play it at high speed or fast forward it if you need to in order to master that. But we are going to be scheduling 3 Zoom calls a day. That will make it more like school for the kids. If you want, I've heard some Catholic schools are even making their kids dress in uniform. I think that's a little over the top, but if it helps your kids stay organized, go for it. Feel free. Either way, they should be dressed appropriately for school, not in their PJs. We are going to require video to be on for our students. It's, again, a way for us to connect to them. Right now, I'm feeding off of a lot of your energy. Every time I look up and see Ms. Guzman smile at me, every time I look over and see Ms. Janae nod at me, it helps me know that I'm making connection with you. The same thing is true when we're teaching. Being able to see our kids' faces and our kids being able to see our face and their classmates' faces helps them connect. And we really want that. We don't want them coming to school, even though they know each other, we need to reinforce those community connections. Those are really super important. So, that will be, attendance will be taken at each Zoom call. Attendance in for student learning is important. It's important for their consistency, first and foremost. It's important for their schedule. We all know kids thrive on consistency, and regular attendance in the Zoom calls is really important. It's also legally required in the state of California for 1st through 8th grade. If your child's not attending, they're considered truant, and we don't want them truant from school. So we are going going to be closely monitoring attendance and following up. We're also following up because we're concerned about all of you. If your child doesn't Zoom in, we want to know, is that because your family is sick? Is something going on? Is there something we need to pray about for you? Is there something we can do to help? Do you need extra assistance? Is technology the problem? We want to be helpful to you, so you're going to get a lot more communication if you or your child are not Zooming in regularly. And again, if you're at work and you're thinking, how am I going to do this at 5 o'clock at night? We will make it work for you, I promise. Well, it's probably something we'll have to discuss individually about how to make it work for you, but we absolutely will be reaching out in the next few days. First with a survey to get some information from you. I'm going to be sending that link when I send the frequently asked questions in the handbook tonight. And then also following up with you one-on-one with your teacher to get some more information about what your specific needs are. We want to be sure we're meeting your needs. You're probably going to be tired of hearing from us over the next 3 weeks, but know that we're doing all of this just to make sure that you get the most individualized experience that we can possibly supply your students with over the next few weeks of distance learning. Keeping kids on a regular schedule is also important. We want to avoid some of the problems we had in our first round of distance learning, where some students slipped off the grid and didn't Zoom in. Some of them fell behind in learning, and then that just causes extreme stress for them. And I'm sure for you guys as parents, there's nothing more stressful than seeing zeros show up in that school speak and knowing that you've got to make up missing assignments or try to figure those out. So we want to keep that from happening. We also want to make sure that our students are moving forward at the same pace. We anticipate that we will be able to come back to school at some point in the future, whenever that may be, and we want all of our kids able to jump right back into learning. They can't do that if they extend their vacation into distance learning. So we want them right back on track. It's also important for their physical and emotional health. You know, we heard from families that students were feeling sad, missing their friends. We heard from you via surveys that, you know, students were, you know, especially some of our older students were acting in a way that we felt maybe marked a sign of depression, and it scared us a little bit as we tried to get them assistance and help. We want to make sure for their physical and emotional well-being that they're checking in not just with you, but with their teachers and with each other daily. That's going to help all of us have eyes on them. It's not a problem that we have experienced here at Holy Trinity, but I'm sure you've read in the news or heard in the news about the increase of students who are physically and emotionally abused. Without the teachers looking in on them every day in the classroom, many issues of abuse are not getting reported. And so our system is simply not working for kids right now in that way. As I said, that's fortunately not a problem that we have to deal with here at Holy Trinity. Most of the time, it's a rare experience when it ever happens. And it's one of those things that we know that the more eyes that are on our kids, the more likely it is we will catch problems quickly, whether it's children who are feeling sad, children who are feeling that they're not being included, children who are getting lost academically, all of those things, we want to be sure that we've got the most eyes on them possible. And that can only happen if they're present and if they're meeting with their teachers on a regular basis, as well as you doing your part as parents. We've got lots of suggestions for students and for parents listed in our handbook that we are going to share with you. Suggestions for making Zoom effective, suggestions for making Google Classroom effective. You'll also be getting information from your students' teachers, as well as more information at back to school night and at the in-person orientation and packet pickup. So we've got lots of information that we will continue to share with you. I'm working on 45 minutes of recording right now, and I'm sure some of you are like, is she ever going to be quiet? I promise, just a few more announcements and then I'm going to wrap it up. Feel free to add any notes in the chat right now as they are coming in. We are recording them. So feel free to put those in. I'm going to check with Ms. Lukens in just a minute before we record those at the end of the day. They're coming in on my side. Ms. Lukens is like, I don't see any questions. They're coming in on my screen, so I've got them. We'll record that before the end, and I will check. I'll scroll through them before we finish up here. For those of you who want to hang around, we can try to go through some of those. So what's the important takeaway that I want you to have? It's number one, I want you to know that we are going to work work with your family individually to provide the best possible learning experience for your child this year, as we always have in the past. It's just going to be a little more individualized than ever. And that's going to take some work on the front end to make it happen, but we are committed to making that happen for you, both in distance learning and in high flex learning, whichever piece you choose of that high flex learning. One of the important ways you can best help your teachers prepare is we are going to be hounding you to fill out a survey. Usually my surveys are optional. This time, this one's mandatory. So I'll be sending it out in a school speak email with the link for you to fill out. We got some background noise here. Hang on, we're going to be closing a door here. I'm not sure if you can hear that, but somebody's starting up something noisy. Okay, so we will be sending that link out to you. The form has questions about things like who's going to be home with your kids during distance learning. It's helpful for us to know, is it mom and dad? But mom and dad are working? Is it grandma who may be able to watch after the kids but may not have the tech knowledge necessary to help with a Zoom call? Is it a babysitter or a nanny taking care of your child? Who is going to be with your child? Or are they going to be in maybe a shared pod of some kind with another family here at Holy Trinity? I don't know what kinds of situations we have. This will help us first get a handle on that. It also asks you what you're thinking about as you think long term. What are you thinking about right now? This does not in any way lock you into anything. If you say, right now, Miss Lloyd, I need in-person learning because my kids have been home for a long time and I really want in-person learning. When the time comes, if you say, no, I've changed my mind to keep them safe, I'm going to do distance learning instead, that's fine. You are not making any commitment. We are just trying to get a handle on the numbers of what we might be looking at. So choose the option that you think is most likely for your family so that we have an idea of what those numbers look like. You'll also be getting our distance learning handbook. I invite you, as always, to call me. You've got my home phone, or my cell phone, I guess I should say. No more landlines at home. You've got my cell phone. You've got my email. I'm here at school, although I'll be working with teachers off and on over the next few days. Please feel free to email, call, text. I get dojo messages still. Whatever's most convenient for you. Let me know if you've got questions. I'll be happy to answer them in whatever way I can. People always start by apologizing. Miss Lloyd, I know you're so busy. Don't apologize. That's why I sit in the big chair here, is to be able to help you guys. So it's all part of the job. And it's part of my vocation and my ministry as a principal. I love helping you as families. When the kids ask me the best part of my job, I always say problem solving. That's what I do as a principal. My job is to problem solve for you as families, for our kids, and for our teachers. So don't hesitate to reach out. We will also be sending a follow-up FAQ that has answers to questions that we received from the last survey that were mostly dealing with in-person instruction, but I'll put those answers down in writing. I just didn't want to take your time in person tonight, as well as any facts that showed up in the Zoom chat tonight. Don't forget, if you're looking for used uniforms, I've got 2 classrooms full of used uniforms, free of charge. It's a great way to maybe shave a little off of your budget, which I'm sure is as tight as my budget is right now. We're all feeling the pinch of COVID-19. Expenses have gone up and incomes have gone down, and we want to be sensitive to that. I've got a room full of plaid and green items and a room full of white and khaki items. I even have some really nice jackets, some cardigans for those of you who get here early, and for the early shoppers, okay? Obviously, sizes are what they are. It's whatever donations. If you have some clothes that your child has outgrown that you'd like to donate to us when you come, we would love to have them. So feel free to drop them off in the room, and feel free to pick up whatever you need. The used uniform will be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Right now, it's limited to 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. because of mass in the pavilion. I realize that may not work for all of you, and if we have a lot of uniforms still available, what I'll do is I'll set up either an evening option or a Saturday option, or maybe a Sunday after Mass option, although that's a little trickier in the pavilion. But we will set up an option for you to be able to come shop if 9 to 3 doesn't work for you. Just shoot me an email and let me know that you'd be interested so that I know to set one of those up. Okay. For TK, as I said, stay tuned. More information will be coming from Ms. Barraza and Ms. Nelson. What have I forgotten, Ms. Lukens? And next week, look for our Meet the Teacher and Back to School Night information. This session, I'm going to hit stop on the recording because we're hitting up on 50 minutes here. It's going to be a huge video. So I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, but I'm going to continue to answer some questions. So let me stop that. Wrong stop, sorry. Stop recording.